Hello YouTube. This is the first of two videos today, and we're here to talk about the latest episode of Dexter we have watched. We are at the 1/3 point in the season 7. Obviously, after that we have two more seasons, and that's including like the sequel season, I guess, like the end, like the epilogue, I suppose. But yeah, this episode's called Run. Very interesting storylines just being woven in. I mean, this show's just trying all sorts of things at once, and yeah. So the episode begins with Vince Masuka and Dexter investigating the mausoleum. They find no DNA. They realize Dexter. Actually, I mean, everyone kind of knows Ray Spelter did it because he's their groundskeeper or whatever. But Dexter realizes this guy's good. He covers his tracks. It's gonna be difficult for Miami Metro to catch him, so that opens it up for Dexter, and Dexter is continuing his tradition of catching these guys alone, obviously, even though Deborah kind of knows about his lifestyle. As Deborah relaxes in her bathtub, lying in Rita's position, she dozes off and dreams that blood is pouring from the faucet, turning the water red. She has one of those PTSD visions. Deborah's obviously gone through a lot in her life. I mean, let's not act like she's even had that good of a life. Obviously she's a lieutenant, but there's so many things going on in her family and so much history going on in the background that, yeah, she's not gonna ever she's never gonna forget that her brother's a serial killer. She's never going to get used to that. That's I don't know, man. That's not something you can just get used to. Deb enters Dexter's office and orders him to take a coffee break, and they kind of have a conversation. Dexter's like, because why did he kill Trinity Killer? Dexter's like, because I was coming after him. And Deb said, so while we were hunting Trinity, you were too. And Dexter says, I figured out who he was before you did. And there's kind of this, and Deb said, and didn't help us fucking get him, and he knew who I was, where I lived, that I had a family. I was trying to protect them, all that sort of stuff. Deborah says, you wanted to fucking kill him. Dexter said he did. Deborah asked when, and Dexter's like, you know what, he's dead. Let's stop talking about this. I have to pan out this conversation because it's pretty important for the season. Deb wants to know when. Dexter said, I took care of him. Deb said, did you love her? Dexter says, why would you ask him that? I mean, it was pretty apparent that he actually did like Rita. I mean, it's not like he was just using her to live a normal life. I mean, he had a relationship with her. They understood each other. They've gone through a lot of things. Deb said, because I suddenly have no idea what's the truth and what's a fucking lie with you anymore. Were you living a double life? Dexter said he loved her. Deb said, if you were so concerned about your family, then why were you going after Trinity? He knew, knowing what you could put your family through. Dexter says, I love you. Deb says, how could you? How? Dexter said, it's how I've lived my whole life. And he's always been the same. So why are we even having this conversation? So Deb is notified that Ray Spelter has been arrested after a security guard spotted him at a scrapyard. Obviously, he was kind of like a wanted man on the run because they witnessed him. Because Deborah was a witness in him chasing this woman down and murdering her. And she was even a possible victim. So, yeah, moving on from that situation, so at the foxhole, Isaac Serco looks deeper into Dexter Morgan. Obviously, we know that they're on his case now, and Serco's like, oh, he looks familiar. Obviously, they talk to each other at the club, which is going to be really weird now, looking back on that scene. Some interesting foreshadowing, maybe? I don't know. Yeah, Miami Metro shuts down the foxhole again. They're going back there again and again. They can't keep running their operations if we don't have a shooter, because they know for a fact that the shooter had something to do with the foxhole. It wasn't just some random guy that paid for a dance, took her out, and then went and killed her. There's really no reason for anything like that to happen, and it wouldn't happen obviously because there's a fucking bouncer there. So they're not going away with guests. That hardly ever, gets allowed anyway in a strip club. Obviously the bouncers, that's another job of the bouncer to make sure the employees are protected. Spelter won't talk to Batista, so he has an idea. He brings Deborah in. Deborah said she confronted him, and we know that as an audience. Obviously, the rest of Miami Metro doesn't quite know that. But if she goes in and starts kind of talking down on him and stuff, he's going to confess. So Deb then enters the interrogation room and begins by showing Spelter a picture of his beautiful mother and kind of throwing some really personal remarks and whatnot at this guy. And he does... He says, I should have killed you like I killed the other bitch. And that's the confession. That's all you need. He said, like I killed the other bitch. Like that's all you have to hear from him. So after work, Deb and Dexter talk in the parking lot, and she brings up her concerns about Harrison being raised by a serial killer. And again, I'm going to kind of paraphrase what their conversation went like. So Deb says, I've been thinking a lot about Rita, about how she died, and it's a really interesting situation. She kind of starts to question if Dexter did it. And Dexter reassures her that he can protect his son through her death. Deb says someone needs to protect him from you. You're a problem. You're a threat. And Dexter is just thinking he's lived 3 years of his life and nothing has happened. Dexter says I'm a good father. I mean, he is in a way, but you kind of understand where Deborah's coming from. This guy's literally a serial killer. She just wants to protect him. She says it's not fair of you to expose a child to your life choices. Show him this life. This is very preventable. And Dexter doesn't he says he doesn't have to make any decisions. His son's life is already made out. He's not going to be a killer. Deb tells him, you said it yourself, Dexter, that you can't stop, that you don't want to stop. Obviously, he's addicted, and she's kind of keeping that in mind. And Dexter says if anything happens, he'll handle it. I mean, he's been able to handle it over the seasons. Deb, says, what if you had been 3 minutes later to Spelter's fucking maze? And Dexter says he wasn't. He was able to save her. And Deb says you were too late for Rita. Dexter said, I should have killed Trinity the first time I saw him, and obviously that's a fatal mistake that he reflects on every day of his life, That's the mistake you made, Deb questions him. Dexter says, yes, yeah, I did make that mistake. Deborah says it's not in his control what happens, and Dexter says everything is in his control, and that's it's crazy because he says everything's in his control. That's kind of his motives for killing people. He wants to be in control. He wants to be an authority of some sort. So yeah, anyway, bartender Alex DeBrosny is surprised when Isaac, George, and Jurg show up at his door, and they're plotting to get him to kill himself. And he writes a suicide note. He shoots himself in the head. His family's lives were on the line and all that. So Hannah McKay enters the homicide department and walks over to Dexter. Obviously, you can see some intimacy between these two. Dexter might not return it as much, but yeah, they kind of have a little chit chat, talking about her past life and stuff. Maria LaGuerta shows the team a cop cam video of 4 officers beating up Spelter while apprehending him, and this is obviously a bad thing. They didn't let him recite his Miranda rights. He didn't understand his rights. He didn't verbally say he understood his rights. So now they took the confession out of court, and now he's free. So yeah, that's obviously very bad luck for a new lieutenant like Deborah. So Isaac and Jurg sit in a car outside Alex's house as the police arrive to kind of examine the scene, make sure nothing bad happens, and make sure they don't find anything, So inside the house, it's determined that Alex was killed by a single gunshot to the right temple, and obviously this whole scene is kind of unnecessary. It's just them finding out about it, because obviously we know what the hell happened, Dexter finds Jamie going through Harrison's toys, deciding what he's outgrown. He's obviously growing, and they're going through his old stuff. Yeah. So, and anyways, at Briar Cemetery, Dexter sneaks into Spelter's dimly lit, unkempt RV, and Spelter returns unexpectedly, and they kind of have a brawl. Dexter gets knocked out. Dexter wakes up in an abandoned warehouse. And yeah, this whole chase thing kind of ensues. I don't want to tell every fucking sequence that happens, but you guys get it. Spelter chases him, and Dexter obviously escapes being Dexter. Being just one of the smartest characters in television history. In case Spelter should track him down, Dexter sends Harrison away to Orlando to stay with Astor and Cody until he deals with the issue, something he probably should have done with Trinity, if I'm being honest. Isaac Sherko uses his key to Victor's apartment, which still has a police seal on the door, and he's like kind of going in there. It's a mess, ransacked by cops, and he's kind of like living through his memories. Yeah, I mean, Victor was a really good man to him, and he's kind of like, Sirko's kind of looking through everything. But Deb and Batista attend Melanie Garrett's funeral. Spelter shows up, and this whole fucking confrontation goes on, and it's not good. Dexter visits Deb, having heard about her confrontation with Spelter, making sure she's okay, and she's like, oh, are you just being fucking fake now? Man, she's just obviously venting her frustrations. We know that's how Deborah is, but yeah. So at Miami Metro, Batista tells Quinn that Alex's suicide was too neat and easy, and he thinks it was a setup, and Quinn's like adamantly like, no, this is our guy, After dark, Spelter catches a glimpse of someone moving through the cemetery and looks around. And, Dexter does this thing where he pretends he doesn't know that Spelter's following him, but then he, hides. Spelter goes to this grave that says stay, and Dexter knocks him out with the shovel. So Spelter wakes up on a table inside the crematorium, pretty much in the kill room or whatnot, and Dexter plans to kill him. Dexter discloses, normally now is when I'd slice your cheek with my scalpel and get a drop of blood remember you by, but I can't risk anyone finding a blood slide ever again, obviously with the whole thing with La Guerta. So he goes through his killings, blah, blah, blah. Dexter calls Deb and waits outside until she arrives. She shows up at the scene where they killed the guy, and she's kind of glad. She's kind of glad that he did this, out of vengeance. And yeah, that's the episode. I kind of got to get out of here. I don't want to really dwell on this episode. It's a good episode. Go watch it, but I got other things to do. So have a good rest of your day, guys. Stream tonight, all that. Let's go.